Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. This is the YA, or even lower than that, young readers. Anybody could read this book. So, Just for Boys presents Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. No. Star Trek is for anybody, boys, girls, whatever, doesn't matter. Okay. It began with a sound, nothing very frightening, just a harmless sort of gibberish. But because no one could answer it, the future of the planet Earth was doomed. The first victim was the starship Saratoga. As the crew listened to the strange sound, they watched a huge probe float closer and closer. No matter what they tried, they could not figure out how to answer it. So the sound became louder, and suddenly the ship began to lose power. The science officer turned to the captain. "All systems have failed. We have reserve power only." "We're out of control. Rig for collision," the captain ordered. The probe came closer to the ship. The crew gasped when they saw it. It was miles long, but it just passed by harmlessly into the distance. The science officer was stunned. "They finished us," he said, "and we don't even know what they want." I should mention there's some errors in this book. I'm just going to read them straight out, but I mean, whoever wrote this didn't understand the movies, apparently. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Just letting you know that. All right, continuing. The place, Starfleet Federation Headquarters, San Francisco, USA, Earth. The time, the 23rd century. In the council chamber, leaders from many planets were gathered. Among them was Sarek, father of Captain Spock. On the screen, a film of grave importance had begun. A horrified hush came over the room as they all watched the USS Enterprise exploding to bits in outer space. When the film ended, another one immediately began. "There! Hold the image!" The Klingon ambassador pointed at the screen as a picture of the Enterprise's Admiral Kirk appeared. "Behold the terrorist James T. Kirk! He's responsible for murdering a Klingon crew, stealing a Klingon vessel. See now the real plot and intentions." The film continued, the infamous Genesis film. On it, Kirk described the most wondrous and dangerous process ever known to the universe. Developed by Kirk's son, the Genesis energy force could turn dead matter into life. During the Enterprise's battle with the Great Khan, a Genesis pod was shot into a dead planet. No, that's not true. Soon the planet teemed with jungles and lakes. Khan was beaten, but only after Spock died to save the Enterprise. A saddened crew sent Spock's corpse to rest on the Genesis planet. Before long, the Klingons arrived at the planet to steal the secret of Genesis, and as part of their plot, they murdered the son of Admiral Kirk. As revenge, Kirk destroyed the Enterprise, but only after beaming the Klingon crew aboard, while he and his crew beamed down to Genesis. That's kind of not right either. The Klingon ambassador shouted, "Even as the Federation negotiated a peace treaty with us, Kirk was secretly developing Genesis. He created this planet, a base from which to launch the destruction of the Klingon people. We demand justice." The audience murmured as Sarek spoke. "Ambassador, Genesis was a creation of life, not death. It was the Klingons who destroyed the USS Grissom while trying to gain the secret of Genesis, and your men killed Kirk's son. Do you deny these events?" "We have the right to preserve our race." "Do you have the right to murder?" Sarek asked evenly. The council president then turned to the Klingon. "Mr. Ambassador, the council's deliberations are over. You have been allowed to put your views on record." "Then Kirk goes unpunished?" the ambassador shouted. "Admiral Kirk has been charged with 9 violations of Starfleet regulations." "Starfleet regulations?" The ambassador looked furiously at the president. "Remember this well. There will be no peace As long as Kirk lives! With that, he and his staff stormed out. The president turned to the elder Vulcan. Sarek, we ask you to return Kirk and his crew to answer for their crimes. With all respect, Mr. President, Sarek answered, there is only one crime, denying Kirk and his crew the honors they so richly deserve. You are welcome to remain and testify, the president said as he ended the meeting. Light years away, on the planet Vulcan, Kirk and his crew had just finished an important project, creating a new spaceship to replace the destroyed Enterprise. And they had made it out of a captured Klingon vessel, its new name, the HMS Bounty. They were also waiting to find out if Spock was normal again. After Spock's death, his coffin had landed on the Genesis planet. As the dead planet was brought to life, so too was Spock, as a newborn baby. But Genesis had a flaw. Everything aged much too fast, and Spock grew to manhood in less than a day. Kirk and his crew rescued him and brought him to Vulcan in the Klingon ship. But there was a problem. How could Spock possibly regain all the knowledge he had in his first life? Spock had thought of that even before he died. Secretly, he had transferred everything in his mind to Dr. McCoy. Getting it back was another story. Only in Vulcan legend had memory ever been transferred back to someone who gave it away, but Spock and McCoy decided to risk their lives to try it, and they weren't sure it had worked. The air was tense around the crew that once rode the Enterprise. Kirk spoke into his recorder. Captain's log, stardate 8390. We are in a third month on Vulcan, awaiting the progress of Captain Spock's memory training. We have voted unanimously to return to Earth to face the consequences of our actions in the rescue of our comrade, Captain Spock. He turned to Mr. Scott. How soon can we get underway? Give me one more day, sir. Damage control is easy. Reading Klingon, that's hard. Kirk nodded. Then he gazed away toward a Vulcan mountain. His eyes were filled with hope and fear. On that mountain, Spock sat in a chamber surrounded by 3 computer screens. His memory test was underway. With lightning speed, he answered all questions correctly until the final one. How do you feel? Flashed onto the screens. I do not understand, said Spock. Spock, a voice said. He turned to face his mother, Amanda. The computer knows you're half human, she continued. Your mind is being retrained in the Vulcan way, so you may not understand feelings, but as my son, you have them. They will surface. Spock knew this. Like his father, Sarek, all Vulcans buried their feelings in logic. But Amanda was an Earthling, and she knew the computer was looking for Spock's human side. But I cannot wait here to find them, Spock said. I must go to Earth to speak at Admiral Kirk's trial. You do this for friendship? Amanda asked with hope. I do it because I was there. Spock, she said, you're alive because you're feeling human friends risk their lives for you. Spock looked calmly at her. Humans make illogical decisions, Mother. They do indeed. Meanwhile, the space probe was reaching its destination, Earth. Starfleet Command was in an uproar. 5 of their vessels had been put out of order, and they could not get any orders out of Starfleet. A frantic voice came over the intercom. We have lost all internal power. Repeat, we have lost all power. At that moment, the space probe sent its strange sound into the Earth's oceans. And at Starfleet Command, all personnel stared helplessly at the view on their screens. The sound was turning the ocean water into huge clouds. On Vulcan, everything was ready to go with the HMS Bounty. Scotty had even fixed a cloaking device, which the Klingons used to make the ship invisible. As Kirk took his place on the bridge, Spock entered, wearing his Vulcan robe. Permission to come aboard, Admiral, he said. Permission granted, Kirk answered. It's Jim, Spock. Remember? Jim? It would be improper to refer to you as Jim while you were in command, Admiral. Also, I must apologize for my attire. I seem to have misplaced my uniform. Well, you've been through a lot. Station, please. As Spock walked to his station, both Kirk and McCoy noticed he looked stiff. You sure this is such a bright idea? McCoy asked. Spock isn't exactly working on all thrusters. It'll come back to him, Kirk answered, but even he wasn't so sure of that. Soon the bounty was ready. Mr. Sulu, take us home, Kirk commanded. Little did they know how important their trip was. At that moment, Earth was slowly being covered by clouds. With the sun blocked and all land drenched with rain, the world would not be able to survive long. As they got nearer to Earth, Uhura started to pick up an unknown distress signal. Spock listened in as Dr. McCoy approached him, smiling. Spock, McCoy said, I just wanted to say it's nice to have your thoughts back in your head, not mine. Spock just stared back. I mean, I may have carried your soul, but I sure couldn't fill your shoes. My shoes. Forget it. It was useless to make him feel anything, McCoy thought. As McCoy walked away frustrated, Kirk ordered the distress signals put on screen. Most of what they saw was static until the faint image of the Starfleet president appeared. It was hard to tell what he was saying. Warning, do not approach Earth. The orbiting probes signals on energy wave unknown to us. Wave directed at our oceans. All power sources have failed. Starships are powerless. At that point, the message began to clear. A cloud envelope had covered the planet, heavy rain and flooding, temperatures dropping to critical level. Probe signal has knocked out all channels. Communications may be impossible. Save yourselves. Avoid the planet Earth at all costs. Farewell. Farewell. Shocked, Kirk had the probe signal put on the speakers. Spock, what do you make of it? Kirk asked. Most unusual. An unknown energy form of great intelligence and power. I find it illogical that it is hostile. Really? McCoy interrupted, still sore at Spock. You think it's just saying hi there to the people of Earth? There are other intelligent life forms on Earth, Doctor. You're suggesting it may be calling a life form other than man? Kirk asked. A possibility, Admiral. The President did say it was directed at the Earth's oceans. The three men headed for the computer room to analyze the sound. Quickly, the computer came up with a picture of what the sound matched. Kirk's and McCoy's eyes widened when they saw it. As suspected, Spock said without emotion. The probe signals are the songs sung by whales, specifically humpback whales. That's crazy, McCoy said. Who would send a probe hundreds of light years to talk to a whale? Kirk was deep in thought. It's possible, he said. Whales were on Earth far earlier than man. 10 million years earlier, Spock added. Humpbacks were heavily hunted by man. They have been extinct since the 21st century. It is possible that aliens sent the probe to find out why they lost contact. Spock, could we imitate the humpback's answer to the call? The sounds, but not the language. We would be responding in gibberish. Now then, we must destroy the probe. Impossible. It would neutralize us easily. Is there no alternative? Yes, but I cannot guarantee its success. We could attempt to find some humpback whales. McCoy thought Spock was crazy. You just said there aren't any. Except on Earth of the past. So how... Then he realized what Spock meant. Time travel. Now, wait a minute. But McCoy was too late to argue. Spock, get the ship ready for time warp, Kirk ordered. Next stop, the cargo bay, where Kirk met Mr. Scott. Scotty, would we be able to fill this room with water? I suppose so, sir. Are you planning to take a swim? Off the deep end, Mr. Scott. No, but we are going to find some humpbacks. Humpbacked people? Whales, Mr. Scott, whales. Whales? Admiral, how am I going to handle all that weight? You'll work it out, Scotty, and remember, 2 of them. At Starfleet Command, workers ran about in a panic. Lightning and rain threatened to break through the room's huge window, but Admiral Cartwright and Sarek's attention was on the screen. A faint signal from Kirk was coming through. Opinion, probe call, extinct species, humpback whale. Starfleet, we're going to attempt time travel. That was the last they heard as the power went out. Cartwright and Sarek stared silently at the blank screen. Good luck, Kirk, Sarek whispered, and all who go with you. Suddenly there was a deafening crash. The entire great window had blown inward, and the room was instantly filled with flying objects, cries, and howling wind. Kirk turned to Spock as he prepared the ship. What is our target and time? Late 20th century. The Bounty exploded into warp speed. They sped toward the sun with heat shields at full power. Time travel was possible only if they could slingshot around the sun at warp 10. As they got nearer the sun, the bridge began to vibrate wildly. I don't think she'll hold together, Admiral! Scotty shouted. No choice now, Scotty. Mr. Sulu, we need breakaway speed. Warp 9.7. 0.8. Breakaway speed. Now, Sulu! Just as it seemed the ship would be swallowed by the sun, it blasted around like a white bullet. Soon an image of the Earth filled the Bounty's screen. Judging by the air pollution, I believe we have arrived in the late 20th century, Spock reported. They had done it. To make the ship invisible, Commander Chekhov turned on the ship's cloaking device. Admiral, Uhura called out, I am receiving whale songs from straight ahead. They're coming from San Francisco. Kirk was puzzled. From the city? That doesn't make sense. Just then, Scotty's voice boomed over the speakers. Admiral, you and Spock better get down here. Kirk and Spock rushed to the engine room. The ship's fuel, the dilithium crystals, had become weak. Aye, we've got about 24 hours, said Scotty. After that we'll be visible, and there will be no way to get back home. Scotty, is there any way the dilithium can be recrystallized? Kirk asked. Sorry, sir. We can't even do that in the 23rd century. Spock had an idea. There is a 20th century possibility, but we need to collect high-energy photons from one of their nuclear reactors. Where would we find these reactors? Asked Kirk. Nuclear power was widely used in naval vessels. Kirk thought about this as they returned to the bridge. There, a nighttime view of San Francisco filled the viewing screen. Mr. Sulu, set us down in Golden Gate Park, Kirk ordered. We'll divide into teams. Chekhov and Uhura are assigned to find the nuclear reactor. McCoy, you, Scotty, and Sulu will convert the cargo bay into a whale tank. Spock and I will try to trace these whale songs to their source. They all agreed, but Kirk had one warning. Be very careful. Try to fit in. Many customs may take us by surprise. Remember, this is 300 years in the past. These people have never seen an extraterrestrial before. In response, Spock took a strip of lining out of his Vulcan robe. When he tied it around his head to cover up his pointed ears, he looked like a Japanese gentleman in samurai clothing. Or a lunatic who'd just walked out of his hotel room wearing his bathrobe and... Mr. Chekhov, give a phaser and communicator to each team, Kirk continued. We will only radio each other in an emergency? All right, let's do our job and get out of here. The Bounty landed in the park. The ship's ramp was visible when it let the crew out, but when it closed, nothing could be seen, except for the 7 strangers from the 23rd century. Everybody, remember where we parked. They wandered onto the city streets and looked around in wonder. Everything seemed so odd and ancient to them. By the 23rd century, money was not being used anymore, but Kirk realized they needed some now. The only valuable thing he had was an antique pair of eyeglasses. At an antique shop, he sold them to the owner for under $200. Kirk divided up the money with the crew, and the teams split off to their missions. Kirk had no idea where he and Spock should begin searching for the whales. "Simple logic," said Spock. "I will read this map." Posted on a bus stop nearby was a map of San Francisco, but Spock couldn't figure it out. Just then a bus pulled up. On its side was a large advertisement. "See George and Gracie, the only two humpback whales in captivity, at the Cetacean Institute, Sausalito." "I think we'll find what we're looking for at the Cetacean Institute in Sausalito," said Kirk. "Two humpback whales named George and Gracie." "How do you know this?" Kirk gave a sly smile. "Simple logic." When they reached the Institute, they were just in time for a tour. Kirk and Spock looked around in wonder at the main room. Huge models of whales hung from the ceiling. Kirk noticed that the tour guide was an attractive woman, and from the look in her eyes, she noticed Kirk too. "Good morning. I'm Dr. Jillian Taylor, and I'll be your guide," she began. "The Cetacean Institute is the world's only museum devoted entirely to whales. Even though we have laws against whale hunting, some countries and pirates still kill them. If this doesn't stop, there may soon be none left." "To hunt a species to extinction is not logical," Spock said. "Whoever said the human race was logical?" Jillian answered. "Now, if you'll follow me." She led them to the glass whale tank. They all stared down into it to see George and Gracie. In their time, Kirk and Spock had never seen Earth creatures so big. Jillian looked at the whales with a smile. "They wandered into San Francisco as babies and were brought here. Beautiful, aren't they? And intelligent, too. Why shouldn't they be? They're swimming around with the largest brains on Earth." She led the group down the stairway that curved around the whale tank. No one noticed that Spock was not with them. "Unfortunately, soon we will have to return George and Gracie to the open ocean," Jillian said with a sigh. "For one thing, we can't afford to feed them a couple tons of shrimp a day." Kirk was shocked. If they let the whales out to sea, how could his crew possibly find them and beam them up in time? "How soon?" he asked. "Soon," she answered sadly. It's too bad, really, because I've grown quite fond of them." At the bottom of the tank, the group looked at the whales through the glass. Over speakers, the sound could be heard. "What you're hearing is a whale song sung by the male. In the ocean, other whales will pick up the song and pass it on." Suddenly, Kirk's eyes popped open. In the whale tank, he saw three figures, George and Gracie, and Spock, with his hand on one of the whales. "He's mind-melding with a whale," Kirk thought. "We still don't know the reason for the songs," Jillian continued. An older woman spoke up. "Maybe he's talking to that man." Jillian spun around to see Spock. "What the heck?" She raced to the top of the tank, and Kirk followed. When they got there, Spock had come out of the water. Jillian was furious at him and Kirk. "I don't know what this is about," she said, "but I want you guys out of here right now, or I call the cops." The two men quickly left the building. "What did you learn from them, Spock?" Kirk asked. "They are very unhappy about the way whales have been treated by man." "Well, they have a right to be. Do you think they'll help us?" "I believe I was successful in telling them what we wanted." Not the answer Kirk hoped for, but good enough. "Beep, beep." Kirk answered a signal on his communicator. "Admiral, this is Chekhov. We have found the ship with the nuclear reactor. And Admiral, it is the Enterprise." At the Institute, things had quieted down. Jillian sat by the edge of the whale tank while the whales sprayed her and made noises. It sounded like they were trying to tell her something. But what? Before long, Jillian noticed her boss come in. "Bob, it's tearing me apart, all right?" she said. "I don't want to let the whales go." "I know, but we can't keep them here without risking their lives." He gave her a friendly look. "You look tired. Why don't you go home?" She nodded and left. In a few minutes, an assistant came in. "We all ready?" he asked. "Looks like it," Bob answered. "Jillian's going to go crazy." "I know, but it's for her own good." Something sneaky was up. On her drive home, Jillian passed by Kirk and Spock and offered them a ride. Kirk whispered to Spock, "It's her, the woman from the Institute. Maybe we can find out when those whales are really leaving." Both men climbed into the truck. As they drove off, Jillian asked, "What were you guys trying to do back there? Was it some kind of macho thing? Because I really hate that." "Can I ask you something?" Kirk said. "What's going to happen when you release the whales?" They're going to have to take their chances. They'll be at risk from hunters." "Say, you guys aren't from the military, are you?" "No, ma'am," Kirk said. Just then Spock spoke up. "Gracie is pregnant." Jillian jammed on the brakes in anger, and the car skidded to a stop. "All right, how do you know that? And who are you?" "We can't tell you that," Kirk said. "All I can say is we mean no harm to the whales. In fact, we may be able to help you in ways you couldn't possibly imagine." "Or believe, I'll bet," Jillian said. "Very likely." "You know, maybe we ought to talk about this over dinner." Jillian agreed, and she drove them all to a restaurant. Miles away, Scotty, McCoy, and Sulu were at a plexiglass factory called Plexicor. Their mission? To find a material that would make a good whale tank for the Bounty. Sulu had split off to look at the factory's helicopter, and Scotty and McCoy had gotten inside the factory by pretending Scotty was an important professor from Scotland. Dr. Nichols, the factory director, showed the two men into his office. Scotty knew he needed to get a lot of plexiglass from Dr. Nichols, but what could he give him in return? He thought a moment and then said, "Dr. Nichols, let's say you have a big wall of plexiglass that's 6 inches thick to hold tons of water. Suppose I could show you a way to make a wall just as strong, but only 1 inch thick. Would that be worth something to you?" "You're joking." "He never jokes," McCoy said with a serious face. Scotty sat in front of a nearby computer. With incredible speed, the screen glowed with graphics that amazed Nichols. He knew he could become rich and famous with this formula. Now he would give anything to Professor Scotty. Meanwhile, Kirk had asked Jillian to drive into Golden Gate Park to the landing site of the Invisible Bounty. When they got there, Spock stepped out. "You sure you won't change your mind?" Jillian asked him. Spock didn't understand the slang. "Is there something wrong with what I have?" he asked. "Just a little joke," Kirk said to Jillian. "Goodbye, old friend." But Jillian had another question for Spock. "How did you know Gracie was pregnant? Nobody knows that." "Gracie does," Spock said. He turned to Kirk. "I'll be right here." With that, he walked away. "What? He's just going to hang around the bushes while we eat?" Jillian asked. Kirk shrugged. "It's his way." Spock waited until the car pulled away. Then, when no one was around, he quietly beamed out. Kirk and Jillian drove to a restaurant and sat down for dinner. Kirk began asking questions. "Exactly how will George and Gracie be taken away?" "They'll be flown to Alaska and released there," Jillian sighed sadly. "We'll keep in touch with them by tagging them with radio transmitters." Kirk looked deeply into her eyes. "You know, I could take those whales someplace where they'd never be hunted." Jillian laughed. You? You can't even get yourself from Sausalito to San Francisco without a lift." But there was something about Kirk. He didn't look like a liar, and she liked him. "Where could you take them?" Kirk spoke carefully. "It's not so much a matter of place as of a time." Jillian was listening in hopes that Kirk had an answer, but suddenly Kirk's communicator beeped, and that broke the spell. Kirk flipped it open. "What is it?" "I thought I told you never to call me." "Sorry, Admiral," came Scotty's voice. "We thought you'd like to know. We're beaming them in now." "I see," Kirk said. "I'll tell them phasers on stun. Good luck, Kirk out." Beep. Jillian looked at him sharply. "Who are you?" "All right. The truth. I am from what on your calendar would be the late 23rd century. I've been sent back in time to bring 2 humpback whales with me in an attempt to bring them back from extinction. Well, why didn't you say so? Why all the disguises? You want details? I wouldn't miss this for anything. Then tell me when the whales are leaving. All right. Your friend was right. Gracie is very pregnant. At noon tomorrow, the whales get shipped out. And I'm sure all the newspaper and TV people will be there. Kirk jumped up from the table. Noon tomorrow? Come on. I don't have much time. As they drove to Golden Gate Park, Kirk told her all about his crew and his mission. Well, Admiral, that is the craziest story I ever heard, Jillian said as they pulled up to the invisible ship's landing site. Now will you tell me something, said Kirk. George and Gracie's transmitters. How can we get in touch with them? Sorry, I can't tell you. That's classified. Look, I can get 2 other humpbacks from the open sea, but I'd rather take yours. It's better for me. It's better for you. It's better for them. If you change your mind, this is where I'll be. Jillian looked around. Here, in the park. Right. He gave her a kiss and walked off. Just as Jillian started her car, she heard a funny noise. She turned around. There was no one within yards of where Kirk had been standing. On board the Bounty, Spock reported to Kirk, the tank will be finished by morning. What about Uhura and Chekhov? We're waiting for their call. If we don't move quickly, we'll lose the whales. In that case, chances are our mission would fail. Our mission? Kirk was furious at Spock's calmness. Spock, you're talking about the end of every life on Earth. You're half human. Haven't you got any feelings about that? As Kirk stormed off, Spock looked like he did have feelings. Anger, pain, and confusion. In the naval base, Uhura and Chekhov had sneaked onto the USS Enterprise. They quietly collected photons near the nuclear reactor. When they finished, Uhura radioed Scotty and asked him to beam them up. My transporter power is down to minimum, Spock replied. I've got to bring you in one at a time. Stand by. Take the collector. You go first, Chekhov said. He stepped aside as Uhura was beamed out. Suddenly, Chekhov heard the sound of running feet. Guards, freeze! A gruff voice called out. It was too late to be beamed up. The guards took Chekhov to their office. Soon, the room was filled with naval officers and FBI agents. One agent started firing questions at Chekhov. All right, I want to know who you are and what you're doing here. My name is Pavel Chekhov, Starfleet Lieutenant Commander, United Federation of Planets. He's a Rusky, someone said. We'd better call Washington. Quickly, Chekhov snatched up his phaser. Don't move, or I will be forced to stun you. The FBI agent came toward him. Chekhov fired, but the phaser made a tiny noise and did nothing. Must be the radiation, Chekhov said. He threw the phaser at them and ran out the nearest door. The chase was on. Chekhov climbed a ladder onto the deck of the Enterprise, but Marines and patrolmen came at him from all directions. He stopped by the edge of the deck, trapped. There had to be a way to escape. He looked to his left. A group of Marines came at him. Chekhov slipped. Ah! Right off the edge of the ship. When Chekhov's chasers looked over the edge, they saw him lying on a barge floating on the water. His eyes were closed. Get Corman over here! Things were tense on the Bounty. They had lost touch with Chekhov, and Uhura felt terrible that she had left him alone. Uhura, you did what was necessary. Keep trying, Kirk said gently. Then he spoke into the intercom. Mr. Scott, how long for the dilithium crystals? It'll be well into tomorrow. Not good enough, Mr. Scott. You've got to do better. The next morning, Jillian drove up to the Cetacean Institute. She was surprised. No cameras, no newspaper people. She locked the main door and walked into the tank area. George and Gracie were gone. Jillian saw her boss standing in the corner of the room. They left last night, he said. We didn't want a mob scene with the press. Besides, we thought it would be easier on you this way. Jillian's face turned red with anger. You sent them away without even letting me say goodbye to them? She slapped him hard and ran outside. Crying, she jumped into her car and drove to the place where she left Kirk in Golden Gate Park. "Kirk!" she screamed, but her voice was drowned out by a loud sound in the air. She looked up to see Sulu in a helicopter. He was lowering a huge sheet of plexiglass into thin air. Then she saw something that made her jaw drop open. Scotty was floating in the air, guiding Sulu, but there was only half of him there. She couldn't know that the other half of him was being covered by an invisible ship. "Admiral Kirk!" she yelled. "I need you!" On board the ship, Kirk heard her, and in a moment, Jillian noticed herself start to disappear. In a moment, she was aboard the Bounty, facing Kirk. "Hello, Alice," he said. "Welcome to Wonderland." "It's true, what you said." Kirk showed her the new whale tanks. "Admiral," she said, "they're gone." "Gone?" "They were taken last night. I wasn't told. They're in Alaska by now." Just then, Spock came in and said, "Admiral, we have full power." "Hello, Doctor. Welcome aboard." As Jillian stared at Spock's pointy ears, Uhura's voice came in on the intercom. "Admiral, I've found Chekhov. He's in emergency surgery. He's not expected to survive." "Where, Uhura?" "At Mercy Hospital." In an instant, Kirk, McCoy, and Jillian were in Mercy Hospital. They found hospital uniforms and a bed with wheels. Kirk and McCoy dressed as doctors, and Jillian put on a nurse's uniform. She jumped under the bed sheets and pretended to be a patient, and off they went. They wheeled their way past doctors and policemen right into the operating room, and there, unconscious on a bed, was Chekhov. A doctor and 2 nurses were around him. When no one was looking, Jillian sat up. She, McCoy, and Kirk all put on white masks and went over to Chekhov. McCoy examined Chekhov with his tricorder. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" the doctor said. "I must get to work on him right away or he'll die," McCoy answered. "So put away your butcher knives and let me save this patient before it's too late." "I don't know who you are," the doctor said, "but I'm going to have you removed." "Doctors, please." "Such unprofessional behavior," Kirk said. With one swift move, he had his phaser drawn. Kirk then aimed his phaser at the doctor and nurses and pointed them into a small room. He shut the door, fired his phaser at the lock, and melted it. He melted the lock! At the same time, McCoy began to heal Chekhov with his... No, it says with his tricorder. "Wake up, man! Wake up!" he said. Kirk and Jillian joined McCoy. Soon Chekhov's eyes started to flutter. He sat up with a start. "Dr. McCoy," he said. McCoy smiled. "Hello, Chekhov." They wheeled Chekhov out of the operating room and down the hall. One of the policemen remembered seeing them when they went in. "How's the patient?" he asked. "He's going to make it," Kirk answered. The policeman looked at his partner. "He? You went in with a she." "One little mistake." Kirk, McCoy, and Jillian raced away, pushing Chekhov on the bed. Close behind them were the hospital guards with their weapons in hand. At the end of the hall, a large elevator door opened, and Kirk rolled the bed right in. The door closed, and Jillian felt them going the wrong way. "We're going up," she cried out. "They'll take the stairs and catch us." "Calm yourself, nurse," Kirk replied. He pulled out his communicator. "Scotty, get us out of here." When the elevator got to the top floor, the guards were waiting. The door opened, and they stared in shock. No one was there. At that moment, the 4 runaways beamed in near the Bounty landing site. McCoy and Chekhov went aboard, but Kirk stayed outside with Jillian. "Oh, wait, I'm coming with you," she said. "You can't. Our next stop is the 23rd century. Just tell me how to contact the whales. Give me the radio frequency." "All right. It's 401 megahertz." "Thank you. For everything," Kirk said. Then he spoke into his communicator. "Scotty, beam me up." Kirk started to disappear, but Jillian grabbed him by the waist. When he beamed on board, Jillian was with him. She grinned. "Surprise!" Kirk was angry, but he didn't have time to argue. The dilithium crystals were back to normal, so he rushed to the bridge and ordered the ship to take off. As the bridge whirred into action, Jillian looked around, amazed. The Bounty flew over San Francisco, on course to Alaska. Kirk spoke into the intercom. "Scotty, are the whale tanks ready?" Aye, Scotty answered, but I've never beamed up 400 tons before. 400 tons? Well, it's just the whales, Admiral. It's the water. Of course. Just then the whale's radio signal was heard. That's it! That's it! Jillian shouted. Put them on the screen, Kirk commanded. Instantly, the screen showed George and Gracie in the ocean, jumping and singing like two happy children. Admiral, said Uhura, I'm picking up another signal in the area. On the screen flashed a picture of a ship. It's a whaling ship, Jillian cried. How far from the whales, Uhura? Kirk asked. About 1 nautical mile. Oh no, we're too late, Jillian cried. The invisible spaceship was in a race against the whale hunters. It sliced through the sky as the hunters began loading their harpoons. 10 seconds, sir, Sulu said. The hunters lined up the whales and their targets and fired. The harpoons sailed through the air, but twang! The hunters couldn't believe what they saw. Their harpoons seemed to hit something invisible and fall into the water. And they practically jumped out of their pants at what happened next. The Bounty, big as a football field, suddenly appeared right where the harpoons had hit. The hunters spun around in a panic and beat it. The Bounty crew cheered, but the biggest problem was still ahead. Kirk again spoke into the intercom. Mr. Scott, let's try to beam those whales in. I'll give it my best, sir. In the cargo bay, Scotty was sweating. The transporter groaned with the strain. Stay with me, sir, Scotty said. I need more power curve. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Before his eyes, the 2 huge whales slowly appeared, and around them was half a tank of seawater. Scotty's mouth opened in amazement. Admiral, he called. There be whales here. Well done, Scotty, Kirk answered. Prepare for warp speed as soon as possible. With a blast of power, the Bounty left Earth for outer space. Kirk stood up. Mr. Sulu, take control. I'm taking our guests down to see your whales. Mr. Spock, we're traveling with a lot of added weight. Have you figured out how we can get enough speed for time travel? Mr. Scott cannot give me exact figures, Admiral, so I will make a guess. You, Spock? A guess? That's extraordinary. As Kirk and Jillian left, McCoy said to Spock, That means you feel safer about your guesses than most other people's facts. Spock felt complimented. Then I will make the best guess I possibly can. Meanwhile, Kirk and Jillian joined Scotty by the whale tank. Hard to imagine, Kirk said. When man was killing these creatures, he was destroying his own future. He looked at Jillian. You know, our chances of getting home are not good. You should have stayed where you belong. I belong here, she said. After all, if you do get back home, who in your century knows anything about humpback whales? You have a point. At that moment, the ship began to vibrate. We're having some power fall-off, sir, Scotty said. Kirk rushed to the bridge, leaving Scotty and Jillian behind. When he got there, Scotty's voice boomed over the intercom. Warp 7.9! Mr. Sulu, that's all I can give you! Spock, can we make breakaway speed? Kirk said. No, Admiral. We may be pulled into the sun. However, there is a chance if I can change our path. Warp 8.1, Sulu said. Maximum speed, sir. Admiral, I need thruster control, said Spock. Acceleration thrusters when Spock commands, Kirk ordered. Spock concentrated on his controls, waiting for the right moment. Steady! Steady! Now! The ship shot toward the sun. Then silence. It seemed the ship had been swallowed up. Sure enough, with a bang of retro rockets, the Bounty whipped around the other side. They were out of danger. Before long, the ship slowed down to normal speed. But something was terribly wrong. There was no sound at all on the bridge. No engines, no beeps, nothing. Suddenly, they could hear the gibberish of the probe. Spock, where are we? Kirk asked. I don't know, Admiral. Computers are not working. I have no control, sir, said Sulu. Picture, Uhura. I can't, sir. Nothing. Kirk didn't know what to do. The entire crew was helpless. For heaven's sake, Jim, where are we? McCoy said. The probe's noise got louder, and they all sensed they were falling. Out of control and blind as a bat, and they were, right toward the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. But this was 23rd century San Francisco. At the exact moment they had left it, and at that moment the window was crashing in on the Starfleet Federation headquarters, just as it did before. Sarek and Cartwright stared helplessly. Then a look of horror crossed their faces as they saw Kirk's ship narrowly miss the Golden Gate Bridge and crash into the bay. The ship's windows blew out, and all the crew members went flying around the bridge. As they started to sink, Kirk yelled to Spock, "Blow the hatch!" Spock obeyed him. Kirk looked through the hatch and into the rain. "You got us to the right place, Spock! Now all you have to do is get the whales out before we sink." He turned to leave the bridge and said, "Mr. Spock, see the safety of all hands!" Kirk fought his way down to the cargo bay. He ripped open the door to find Scotty and Jillian up to their necks in water. He helped them up into the corridor. "The whales, Scotty!" Kirk shouted. "Stuck! There's no power to the bay doors. The explosive override. Let's blow it open. It's underwater. There's no way to reach it. Go on ahead. Close the hatch." Kirk took a deep breath and dove underwater. He couldn't find it. He swam back to the surface, gasped for air, and went back down. Now he saw what he was looking for. This was their last chance. He tore open a seal and pressed a button. Boom! An underwater explosion. The cargo bay doors swung open and Kirk swam out through them. His air was running out. He raced to the surface. Just as he was about to pass out, his head popped above the water. He looked around to see his crew members hanging onto the top of the sinking ship, including Jillian. For a minute, he was relieved until he heard the nagging sound of the probe. Where were the whales? Kirk dove back underwater. He swam toward the cargo bay until a wonderful sight made him stop. Coming out of the bay doors into the ocean were George and Gracie. Kirk swam back to the surface and grabbed onto the ship, but the rain was falling harder than ever, and the probe's call was not being answered. "Why don't they answer? Why don't they sing?" Kirk said. And then, all of a sudden, it happened. From deep in the ocean came the song of George the whale. The probe stopped. Then it turned its antenna toward the sound. It began its signal again, this time softer. The whale and the probe were talking to each other. It went on for a while, each song answered by the signal, and when they were through, the probe blasted into outer space. All at once the rain stopped, the clouds parted, and the sun began to peek through. At Starfleet Command, the lights came back on. "Mr. President, we have power." The President looked out at the bay and saw the sinking spaceship. "Send a rescue shuttle." Within seconds, Kirk and his crew heard the sound of their rescuers on the way. "Congratulations, Jim," said McCoy with a big smile. "I think you saved the Earth again." "Not me, Bones," answered Kirk. "They did it." The crew looked out to sea. George and Gracie were jumping and spouting happily in their new world, and above them, as the sun broke through the clouds, was the most beautiful rainbow they'd ever seen. But when things got back to normal, there was still a big problem left: the trial of the Enterprise crew. Into the Federation Council chamber walked Kirk, McCoy, Scotty, Uhura, Sulu, and Chekhov to be judged by the President. In the front row of the audience were Jillian, Sarek, and Spock. When the crew took their places on the stand, Spock rose and joined them. "Captain Spock," the President said, "you do not stand accused." "Mr. President, I stand with my shipmates," Spock answered. "As you wish." The President read the list of crimes: attacking Federation officers, stealing and destroying the Starship Enterprise, and disobeying the orders of the Starfleet commander. Kirk knew he had done it all for a good cause, saving Spock's life. But still, all the charges were true. "On behalf of us all, Mr. President, I plead guilty." But the President surprised them. Because of what Kirk and his crew had done to save Earth, he threw away all the charges except one. The remaining charge, disobeying a superior officer, is directed solely at Admiral Kirk. "James T. Kirk, I hereby reduce you to the rank of captain." The The crowd didn't know how to take this. "And," the president continued, "because of your new rank, you will be given the duties for which you have shown greatest ability, the command of a starship." Kirk was shocked. This was exactly what he wanted, his own starship again. "Captain Kirk," the president said, "your new command awaits you. You and your crew have saved this planet from its own mistakes, and we forever are in your debt." The audience broke into a standing ovation. As the crowd left, Jillian kissed Kirk and said goodbye. "Well, wait, where are you going?" he said. "You're going to your ship, I'm going to mine. Science vessel. I've got 300 years of catch-up learning to do. See you around the galaxy." Kirk shook his head and smiled. At the same time, Sarek was saying goodbye to his son Spock. "I am impressed with you and your associate, Spock." "They're my friends," Spock said. "Yes, of course." "Do you have any message for your mother?" Spock thought for a moment. Then he said, "Yes. Tell her I feel fine." His human side was, after all, coming back, and he knew his mother would want to know he could finally answer the last question of his memory test. Later, a shuttlecraft picked up Kirk and his crew to take them to their ship. "Probably an old bucket of bolts," said McCoy. But he was wrong, very wrong. They came closer to the ship. In a minute, they could see the whole thing. One by one, their faces lit up. It was the Enterprise, a shiny new ship built to be exactly like the one the crew had commanded for so many years. "My friends," Kirk said, "we've come home." The great doors of the ship opened, and the crew stepped aboard. They went straight to the bridge and took their old places. Kirk sat in his captain's chair. "Mr. Sulu? Let's see what she's got." In a flash, the Enterprise hit warp speed on the first of its new voyages.